Disc 1, The Aching Hunger, was orchestrations of songs of mine from the past. And, you know, those songs were constructed with certain things in mind. Guitar, rock band, you know what I mean? So they lean more towards a rock band sensibility. On the second disc, the music is more compositional for an orchestra, with the rock band supporting it. So they're very different. I mean, when you listen to something like Helios and Vesta, you know, it's a very dense piece of music. As a matter of fact, it's one of the few pieces of music that I ever listened to that really scared me. You know, and that was all compositional with an orchestral frame of mind. When the rock band comes in, it's not like, oh, here's the rock band. It just blends, you know. It was a very different approach for both CDs. I think whenever a person goes to compose or create something, it has to start with a thought. It has to have an idea behind it. That's logical, because it's impossible for anything to happen without it first being thought of. And that's one of the real fun things about doing something artistic. The first place it takes place is in your mind, and there's very few limitations. So one of my favorite times in creating a piece of music is the very beginning, when there's nothing there, because then you can just imagine the world, you know. And I'll pick one track, for instance, which is Shadows and Sparks. It's a long piece of music. It's like 17 or 18 minutes. It's actually two pieces of music, Shadows and Sparks. But the idea came very, very quickly. You know, the whole thing was envisioned in an instant. I wanted to start it. I had the idea to create a piece of music that had elements of song, because I pictured it as the first piece of music in the concert. So I wanted to start with an empty stage and have various instruments come up, and I was going to have them sitting in the audience. Like the horn section would be sitting in one part of the audience, the string section would be sitting in another, and then as the music evolved, these people would stand up and start playing and then walk towards the stage as they were playing. But there would always be one lone virtuoso violinist that is the main communicator with the orchestra. So if you listen to this piece, and on top of that, I wanted to have each section perform a piece of music, a motif, that was a piece of music from one of my songs in the past. Okay, so that was the idea. Now, that idea came that fast. It takes a long time to make it happen. Years, you know. But the fun part was writing it, you know. So at first I thought, I'm going to walk out on stage, and I'm going to conduct the audience, and then I'm going to start conducting to an empty stage, you know, and then I'm going to hand the baton over to the conductor, and he's going to start conducting to the empty stage, and then he's going to have the percussionist come out, and the percussionists are going to start with a little, very, very slight little motif, right? And that motif is going to create a foundation for the main section of the melody to Shadows and Sparks. Okay, so then I had to think, I want the percussionist to play something that's from my catalog. So on Alive in an Ultra World, there's a piece called Babushka, and it has a percussion solo that I wrote. Bump, you know, whatever. So I wrote that, and that's what the percussionists play. And then they take a little piece of that, and they create the chorus section for Shadows and Sparks, and they keep repeating it. Then there's a break, and the pianos and the harp come out, and they play a little something, and then they play a piece called Whispering a Prayer. So these are the Shadows, because they're pieces from my past. And then when they play over the C section, the main section of Shadows and Sparks, they maintain a motif from Whispering a Prayer. Bring, 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 ding, ding, bring, bring, bring. So you hear that. right? And then they stop, and the woodwinds. Now remember how cool it would have been if these sections were sitting in the audience and they were standing up. We couldn't arrange that to do that, you know, because it was too logistically impossible with microphones, and nobody wanted to do something that weird, you know. So then they play a piece called a little section of a song called "Lucky Charms," you know, which is from the Ultrasound, and then that repeats in the C section, you know, as a motif. So now you got the percussion and the strings, the percussion and the harp and piano and the woodwinds building this section, and then that continues, and you got the horns come in and there's a fire in the house. So by the end, on the chorus section of that was the idea, you know. And it goes on, and it builds, and you know, that you asked how I wrote a particular piece, and that's one of them. So